Whenever I review a 50mm lens, there's always at least one comment about the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 being superior, better, it's the best. There seems to be a sort of love affair with this lens, which was released 12 years ago. I never understood it, and I don't think that I yet understand it to this day. Part of this stems from my own experiences with Zeiss lenses not having the best quality control, at least years ago. And the other part is knowing that this is not really made by Zeiss. It's a collaboration where Sony and Zeiss come together. Zeiss designs the lens and Sony makes it. And I always felt like it was some sort of premium brand play. Just stick a Zeiss logo on it and double the price, Trevor. Now, Zeiss does make other lenses, but if you haven't noticed, as of late, they really haven't made any new lenses for Sony for a while, and I don't know that they do anymore. I think Sony has taken over the design and the production of their own lenses, and they've really taken that to new heights with their G Master lines, etc. But still, if you ask any seasoned photographer, they will tell you that the Zeiss has color pop or some character or, quote, beautiful rendering, which all these are words that are thrown around all the time. Now, the point of this video is to answer a question that I have, and one that was inspired by some of your guys' comments. Is the Zeiss better than a modern so-called cheap lens? Well, here are the contenders. The Zeiss all-metal build made in Thailand, and the new Viltrox 50mm f2 all-plastic build made in China. They are both full-frame portrait lenses. They are compact. They are simple, no buttons or switches. They both have autofocus. The difference really is a 12-year-old optical design versus a modern take on one. I took them both along with my Sony a7C, and I hired a model to see how they would compare to one another. And here is what I got. I'm going to keep all of the Viltrox images on the left, all of the Zeiss images on the right. So the first shot is a portrait here, and I'm going to zoom in to 100%. And I can tell, I don't know if you guys can tell, the Viltrox is sharper. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more. That way you guys can see the clarity in the eyes. So the Zeiss is looking a little bit softer. Not terrible. If you're zoomed out all the way, it's going to be tough to tell. In terms of the bokeh, however, the Zeiss does look a little smoother, a little bit less busy. And that's really a byproduct of it being a 55mm as much as the optical design. That extra 5mm of telephoto reach gives you a little bit of subject separation, which is good. Next shot is, again, the same. Both of these are wide open, and let's see. Viltrox looks a little bit sharper to me. Indeed is. So it's not a fluke result, and you'll see the background is, again, smoother with the Zeiss. Here I wanted to take a look at the bokeh difference. So sharpness, I would say, is very, very close, up close. Viltrox still a little bit better. But take a look at the bokeh balls. The ones on the Zeiss are a little bit bigger. They're not perfect circles. You see some fringing on them. The ones on the Viltrox, I'm not going to say the Viltrox is the best lens that I've seen in terms of bokeh rendering, but the bokeh doesn't have this onion ringing that you see on the Zeiss. It doesn't have as much of an outline. It looks more circular, more like actual circles versus these ovals that you get here. So I'd say that in this regard, the Viltrox looks like it has the better bokeh balls. It's not as smooth. If you look at this whole section, it's not as smooth overall as the Zeiss is, and that again probably has to do with 50 versus 55mm. But if you step down on the Zeiss, this is what that looks like. The bokeh balls do start to round out a little bit. You still have some onion ringing and some green outlining, some fringing, but it's looking better. They actually have kind of two corners. It's almost rectangular in a sense with some curves. So it gets better, but it's not perfect even stop down at f2. Here's another example, both lenses at f2, and let's take a look at sharpness in the center. Again, I'm going to hand this to the Viltrox. The Zeiss is good, it's just not quite as sharp. And then the bokeh here, you can see just how busy the Viltrox is compared to the smoother bokeh of the Zeiss. However, you'll see outline here, onion rings. It's not the best performance in terms of bokeh from the Zeiss, but zoomed out all the way, I mean, the Zeiss bokeh does look pretty good even with all that fringing. Here's another shot. I tried to introduce some flare and it looks like both lenses handled that pretty well. Out into the distance, you'll see there is some more chromatic aberration with the Zeiss. Less busy bokeh though, larger bokeh balls. Again, a difference of focal length, I think. If you look at the center of the frame, both images are looking pretty sharp here. This is pretty close. I'd still say the Viltrox is just a touch sharper. I'm looking for that color pop that everyone talks about, and to me, they look very, very close. I mean, let me know if you guys see a difference between the two in terms of skin tones and colors. I'm not seeing anything that really gives me that to die for pop that everyone talks about with Zeiss lenses. So the next image is stopped down at f2.8 on both, and I took this shot several times on the Zeiss because I noticed it was kind of overexposed a little bit, but in terms of sharpness, Viltrox I still think has it. The skin tones look a little whiter here, a little bit more tan natural, I'd say, with the Viltrox. So a little bit of a difference there. Next one, these are both at f2. Again, sharpness in the center of the frame. Viltrox has it. If you're looking at the distance, I'd say, again, that 55mm is performing quite well. Some really poor interior lighting, but I wanted to look at bokeh once again. Sharpness in the center, I'd still hand it to the Viltrox by a thin margin, although the Zeiss isn't bad. And here you'll see kind of more of the same, more circular bokeh balls with the Viltrox, a larger bokeh, but a little bit more football-y with some fringing on the Zeiss. And taking a look at just a flat brick wall, here is where some interesting things happen. Now, I talked about in the review of the Viltrox, this lens has a lot of vignetting, and you could see that here side by side. Here's the Viltrox, and here is the Zeiss. Viltrox, Zeiss, Viltrox, Zeiss. You'll see the edges are super dark by comparison with the Viltrox. However, let's take a look at sharpness. In the center of the frame, it's close. I'm gonna say the Viltrox is a touch better. In the corners, again, the corners are darker on the Viltrox, but they're also sharper. They're a little bit softer. And I'm gonna confirm that with this corner here. Yeah, softer. You could see that in the grout. So take a look at the grout here, and that's the Zeiss. Nice and soft in the corners. Unfortunately, look at this corner as well. It's looking okay, but again, still softer. So across the frame, the Viltrox, wide open, f2 versus f1.8 is better. If I stop the Zeiss down to f2, you'll notice that the corners brighten up a little bit. However, they're still not quite as sharp as the Viltrox. In terms of chromatic aberration, here's what I got. If you punch in a lot of detail here, you could see that the Viltrox looks like it's controlling it better. There's a lot of purple fringing here on that Zeiss. This is kind of an overcast day. There's still some fringing with the Viltrox. It's not like it's perfect or anything, but there's less of it compared to that Zeiss. Even stopped down to f2 on the Zeiss. You can see that that helped a little bit, actually helped quite a bit, less fringing, but still I'd say that there's a little bit more fringing with that Zeiss versus the Viltrox if you're shooting in extreme conditions. In terms of flaring, both lenses have some flaring elements. Neither one stood out to me as a clearly better performing lens, unfortunately, so I leave that as a draw. In terms of autofocus, the Zeiss is surprisingly snappy. It moves very quickly between subjects, and it's near dead silent. I think the accuracy is pretty good in those examples that I just showed you. It's just a slightly softer lens in the center and a slightly softer lens in the corners of the frame. The Viltrox, on the other hand, is slower to autofocus, but I found accuracy to be excellent. Focus breathing, likewise, is another win for the Viltrox. The Zeiss has plenty of focus breathing by comparison. The Viltrox has very little of it. Now, after all of this, you have to come down to value. The Viltrox is simple. It's a $200 lens. It's brand new. There aren't really any used ones out on the market quite yet, but I'd imagine it's going to depreciate similar to a used Range Rover. The Zeiss is still for sale, brand new on Sony's website for a whopping $900, which is a joke. Amazon has the international version for $569 US new, but there are plenty of these used everywhere. In fact, I bought 2 of them because I couldn't help myself. I paid $330 plus taxes for a mint condition one, and then I bought this one here for $250, which is slightly more used. And I'd say if you are buying a Zeiss 55 for around that $300 mark, it's like buying a 10-year-old Toyota Camry. The previous owners have lost all of the depreciation, and now you probably won't lose much over the course of the next couple of years that you use the lens. So after this test, I'd say that I appreciate the Zeiss a little bit more. It performed better than I expected. Still, optically, I am impressed with how well these cheaper Chinese lenses are holding up. In fact, beating, this was one of the top tier lenses back in the day 12 years ago when it was launched. And obviously, optics and coatings and optical structure has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. And so now they are offering these ultra budget, high performing lenses that are nice and compact, nice and light. It's a good thing if you are a consumer and you're looking for some lens options. As for which one of these two I would personally pick, I'd say I have to go with the Viltrox just because it's just sharper across the frame. It has its own problems, dark vignetting. The bokeh isn't the best in the world, but I'd say for the value that you're getting, brand new lens, $200, it's really tough to beat. The Zeiss, however, if you own it and if you buy one for $300, you're not losing out much. And in theory, you might be getting some color pop that I'm not seeing in the comparison photos. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Which one of these two lenses do you think performed better than the other? Did I miss anything in this comparison? Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more and have a nice day. Bye-bye.